Hey everyone, it's Rob B here with Rob D, and you are listening to the Property Podcast. Who wants to invest in average? You want the best. And in this episode, always one of the most popular episodes of the year, we give you our property hotspots of 2026.
Welcome to the Property Podcast. Thank you for joining us. In case you don't know, we run a business that buys more than £100 million worth of property for our clients every year. You can find out about that at propertyhub.net/invest. So obviously, we're pretty interested in where are the best places to invest. We think we found them, but we're not keeping them to ourselves, and we'll be sharing them with you in just a minute.
But let's start with our news story of the week. And this gentleman seems to be making news everywhere around the world at the moment, but he's also now made it to the Property Podcast. And that gentleman in question is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump wants to ban large investors from buying single family homes in a bid to bring down prices, Rob. Now, Donald talks a lot, and some of his talk leads to action, but a lot of it doesn't as well, so we have to bear that in mind. So let's explain what he's proposing, because it's not the biggest news story in the world about Donald at the moment, but it is important. And then what the impacts of this as well are important to discuss too.
Yeah, so what he's addressing is effectively the same challenge that we've got in the UK. Housing is increasingly more expensive. There's not enough of it. So while in the UK, politicians' moves have been targeting individual landlords, trying to usher them towards the exit, what Trump is doing is targeting the big investment firms like Blackstone, who own a lot of individual homes, and trying to take them out of the market. So he's not saying they have to sell what they've already got, but saying they won't be able to buy any more. And if you take the simplest possible view of economics, then you'd say, well, there's less demand in the market, therefore prices will fall, or prices at least won't go up as fast. Now, there's not a direct comparison to the UK because it is a bit different in the US. In the UK, we have pension funds and banks, big companies owning individual properties, but they normally play a part in building them as well. So they own them from new, and it's new supply that wouldn't otherwise happen. In the US, there is more of big investment firms buying up houses that already exist on the resale market. So there's more of an argument to be made there than here that they could be contributing to prices in some way. So that's where this statement has come from. But like you said, Rob, what we've got to ask ourselves is, what does it mean? And wrapped up in that, is it going to happen anyway?
Let's just start with a big fat if, because as we've already said, not everything Donald Trump says happens. So let's just begin with that. But let's play it through. If this happened, Blackstone won't stop investing. They don't go, okay, well, let's just sit on that cash then. They'll deploy it in other areas. Now, they can move to other asset classes, absolutely. But if they have real estate funds and real estate teams, and that money needs to be deployed elsewhere, well, a great place for it to move to could be the UK. And that's for many of the reasons why we invest. Great legal system, fantastic land registry, the use of leverage, really reputable developers. The list goes on and on. And that inflow of cash, which would be significant, could start finding its way to the UK market. Now, if, and I'm going to throw another if in, if that happened, then you would naturally expect property prices to push up if the funds were significant enough. Because if the increased competition comes in, they're already operating in the UK, it's important to say. But if they come in a much bigger way and buy the majority of new build property that is produced, that's going to encourage those developers to build more, but it will also increase prices because there's just so much money flooding in. And I think that's a reasonable thing to expect as a consequence of this. Now, that might annoy you or excite you, depending on where you are in your portfolio journey. If you're sitting on a load of property, you probably like to see property prices go up. And if you're building your portfolio and you're in the early stages, that would annoy you because suddenly you're dealing with much more competition. I wouldn't get worried because this is a long way off. I know he can be decisive and quick with some of his actions, but he often falls back from very aggressive positions. So, Rob, I'm not going to lose any sleep on this or get excited by this in either capacity. It's not something that I think will be seen through. Could be very, very wrong on that. But for me, it's interesting to observe, but no action needed right now.
Okay, 2026 hotspots. Always love putting these together, and we know this is always a popular episode. So let's get straight into it, Rob. This year we're doing something a little bit different. We've split our hotspots into the obvious and the non-obvious. So there may be some surprises coming up. We'll cover some areas that you might not have been expecting to hear in this episode, but we will justify We will explain. But first, Rob, let's go through the obvious ones, which we can do pretty quickly because I don't think there's going to be any surprises here or any complex cases that need to be made. These are just clear winners.
They are clear winners, and they may be obvious, but obvious doesn't mean boring because they are super strong. And let's start with one that's been in our list for many, many years now, has no sign of being removed, and that's Manchester. Manchester city centre and Greater Manchester. Manchester has seen billions of pounds spent on it over the last few decades, and billions of pounds more are planned to be spent in Manchester. That city has absolutely transformed. It's become a bit of an economic powerhouse now. I think that's fair to say. There wasn't really an alternative to London in the UK. It was London and then everywhere else just crack on. But Manchester feels like a very strong contender to be the UK's second city with so much going on, with so much investment. And that goes from jobs, transport links, all the infrastructure, the lot. So much has happened. So much still to happen. And of course, all those great universities as well. Greater Manchester, well, you've got 10 boroughs there, so you've got plenty to go at. So maybe your budget won't go as far as the city centre, or maybe you just don't fancy the city centre. Well, Greater Manchester gives you lots of variety. You've got places like Salford, Stockport, Wigan, Bolton. They're all benefiting from the powerhouse that is Manchester city centre, but they're all doing stuff in their own right as well. Some of them have seen a tremendous amount of money spent on them. Still lots more funds to go through. You're looking for good transport links into the city centre. So if you do look at any of these boroughs, don't just pick one and think it'll be fine. Make sure the transport links are there, fast trains into the city centre. But if you do that and you buy in a good area, then you will probably do very, very well.
Pretty hard to go wrong in Manchester. And I'd say the same for the next of our obvious picks, which is Leeds. Leeds we've probably had in our hotspots every year, I would have thought, since we started doing hotspots way over a decade ago. But the amazing thing is prices are still so reasonable for what you're getting, even after all this time. I think the strength of Leeds as a city is underrated. You've obviously got the universities, but most people don't know what a strong financial services city it is. So you get lots of students there, but you also get lots of students staying on, loads of young professionals staying in and moving to Leeds for those jobs in financial services, but other sectors as well, like the NHS. Overall, just very economically solid. And that's why there's been so much build-to-rent investment in Leeds. We said before that it's always reassuring when big companies spending hundreds of millions of pounds with lots of very smart people crunching the numbers decide to put their cash somewhere. They have decided on Leeds, and there's been absolutely tons of investment there. There's also something else that we always like to see, which is major regeneration. There's loads going on across the city, most notable being the South Bank project, which is pretty much going to double the size of the city centre and create 35,000 new jobs. So Leeds has had so much going for it for all these years, still does, but it's going to have more.
It's crazy to think that Leeds can be called underrated, Rob, with all that going on, but it really is. And next on our list is probably a place that's also underrated, which is a bit bonkers because it's Birmingham. Birmingham is another city that has transformed. I think the difference between Leeds and Manchester is Leeds has felt like it's always been great. It didn't need extra money coming in. It has had that extra money. But Manchester and Birmingham, going back a while, needed a bit of money spending on it. And that money has come. While that is well documented with Manchester, people don't really talk about it as much with Birmingham. But you again are seeing billions of pounds being spent in Birmingham. You've got Paradise Birmingham, 700 million. You've got Birmingham Smithfield, 1.9 million. You've got the West Midlands Investment Zone, 5.5 billion. We're not talking pocket change here. We're talking real transformation. And of course, HS2 is going to be delivered to Birmingham soon, getting you to London in just 49 minutes. You can't get across London in 49 minutes. So I don't think Birmingham would want to be referred to as a commuter town to London or a commuter city to London, but it will be commutable, absolutely. So that will be transformational as well once that is delivered. There's the metro extension as well. So much is happening, yet so few people talk about Birmingham and the opportunity it presents. We actually put out a brilliant video on Birmingham earlier this year and the investment opportunity it holds. So we will link to that in the show notes if you want to do a bit more research. But Birmingham for us is very much an obvious pick.
Yep, and I'd say that our final obvious pick probably falls under the category of obvious to listeners of this podcast, but not particularly obvious to anyone else. And that is Derby, with an honourable mention for Nottingham next door. So Derby, we've been talking about for quite a few years now. because it's just got this really obvious opportunity where you've got these big local high skill employers, yet there's massive undersupply of high quality rental accommodation. Up until a year or two ago, if you looked at what was there on the market to rent, you would be extremely underwhelmed. There was just nothing. That is starting to change as the result of some of the projects that have taken place, but that undersupply is still real. And then the other critical factor that you've got in Derby, because you do have these high skill employers, that the average wage in Derby is very high, and the average wage in comparison to property prices is out of balance with the rest of the UK, meaning that property prices to buy and also to rent are still very affordable. And that is critical because it means that there is headroom for prices and rents to rise. It doesn't matter how great a city is if no one can afford to pay any more than they're already paying. So Derby's got all of that going for it. There's also loads of regeneration going on in the city centre itself. And because it's not a big city centre, when you come in and you start chucking hundreds of millions of pounds around, it makes a difference. So Derby is a very clear opportunity. And I think there's a risk that Nottingham gets overlooked as a result of this. We used to talk about Nottingham a lot. We haven't done so much recently, not because anything's changed. It's just because it's almost so obvious that we don't need to talk about it. But Nottingham is somewhere I've been investing for a long time. It's bigger and more mature than Derby, but prices still very reasonable, yields still very good, and it's got the same transport and connectivity benefits as Derby as a result of where it sits in the country. So Derby and Nottingham rounding out our picks of the obvious.
So that completes our obvious list. Now for the stuff that may surprise you. Now I'm confident in our non-obvious list, there's going to be places that you will be raising your eyebrows to. Maybe not the first one though, I hope. And it has made our non-obvious list because I don't think many people would write this down as a place to invest. But actually, I don't think many people would argue with it as a place to invest. And that's Doncaster. And what's to argue with? You've got low price point compared to all the other places that we talked about. We've got great yields. We've got huge employment because of where Doncaster is, its transport links. There's so much to like from a pure buy-to-let reason for Doncaster and its surrounding areas like Gainsborough and Scunthorpe that you really, really should be looking at it, especially if your budget won't stretch as far as the city centres that we've talked about so far. I mean, the road connections are fantastic. You just look at a map and you can see that for yourself with all the motorway networks that are on its doorstep. But the trains as well. I don't think many people realise how well connected it is by train. So 20 minutes to York, direct. 30 minutes to Leeds, direct. So commutable to Leeds. Only an hour and a half to London, again, direct. Because it's on the East Coast line, you've got all these fast trains that you can take advantage of. And it's not like there's just one train a day going to the capital. There's multiple per day. Every single hour, you've got a train going into London. All that connectivity, like I've said, attracts all the major employers like Amazon, Lidl, many other logistic-based businesses. You've got the iPort Logistics Hub, which employs over 5,000 people. And with rental yields between 6 and 9% for these areas, it just makes it very, very attractive. But capital growth prospects are very good as well for this city. It feels like it's underpriced. It feels like when you look at it compared to other places, when you're getting strong fundamentals and really strong yields, normally the next thing that arrives is capital growth. So that's why we picked out Doncaster and its surrounding areas, because the fundamentals are strong, the yields are very strong, the price point is low, affordability is really strong. All those factors normally combine to see capital growth uplift. So if it doesn't deliver this year in 2026, it won't be long before really strong capital growth arrives at Doncaster and the surrounding areas.
You said yields, you said affordability, you said fundamentals. All of those same things would apply to the next one on our non-obvious list, which is Newcastle. Now, for years, we've had Newcastle as a one to watch. We've been saying it's got a lot going for it. It's going to be time, but it's not yet. But now I think it is the time. We actually did our first deal in Newcastle last year. Technically Gateshead, but whatever. And it was a great deal. And we are actively looking for more because it was such a great deal and it was so popular. So what's Newcastle got going for it? Well, it's got extremely affordable house prices. So the average house price is 206,000, way, way, way below the UK average. And of course, that's everything. So if you look at your typical buy-to-let price point, that's going to be significantly below that. And importantly, the other thing that it's had recently is rental growth. So the Northeast as a region had 9.2% rental growth last year. That's important because for a long time in Newcastle, yields weren't as high as you'd expect. When you see low property prices, you might expect high yields, and that wasn't the case because rents were stubbornly low. But because rents have picked up so fast, that means that yields have improved. So now, great, you've got that combination you want. You've got strong yields now, and you've got great growth potential because prices are still so low. Word of warning, this applies everywhere. We say it every time we talk about hotspots, but it applies more in Newcastle than anywhere else. It's really important not to make the classic mistake that so many people make of finding a city that's already affordable, then getting carried away by just how affordable it is and going on to buy the cheapest thing you can find there. This happens bizarrely often, and it's always a mistake. If you're going somewhere like Newcastle, prices are going to be affordable. You can afford the best areas and you can afford prime property. That's what you want to be buying. If you buy the cheap stuff, it's going to cause you more problems and you're not going to see the benefit of that capital growth. Prices rise for the things that everyone wants. So make sure you get that right in Newcastle and you'll have yourself a strong investment.
Next on our list is a place that has never made our lists before. So we welcome, for the first time ever, Coventry. Yes, Coventry is our next non-obvious. If you're surprised, well, that's why it's called non-obvious. But there are many, many reasons to look at Coventry. I think where we found success over the years when we've picked areas is areas that have incredible fundamentals, but are a bit unloved or a bit underrated. Coventry feels like it's one of those places that it's underrated despite what is there. Because fundamentals really drive these picks. And because of its location, 75% of the UK is within 2 hours of Coventry. The rail links are fantastic. Only 50 minutes into London, only 20 to 30 minutes into Birmingham. So the two biggest cities are commutable. Then you've got the motorway networks as well. Easy access to the M1, M6, M42, M69, which means it creates a magnet for employers with all that connectivity. And the city itself has got plans for a light rail, which is basically a tram, and that's going to be delivered as well. But it's not just ourselves who rate Coventry. On the Market actually picked Coventry as one of its hotspots in 2025. So we're not first to pick it out, but we definitely believe there hasn't been much attention given. And the development of the city centre is a big reason for that. So you've got this connectivity, but the city centre isn't known for its beauty. I think that's fair to say. But there's a 37-acre master plan being delivered between the railway station and the city centre, and that will transform how people feel when they enter the city. It's already started, so it's not something that's being talked about. It's already been started and it will take many years to deliver, but that will transform the whole feel of the city centre. And then you've got the huge investment of the Coventry and Warwick Gigapark, and that's battery manufacturing. And batteries are obviously very much in demand the way the world is going right now. That's a 250 hectare site, and that will create over 6,000 jobs. But it's not jobs in the pipeline. You've got jobs there already. Jaguar Land Rover, £15 billion committed over the next 5 years. Future Energy Lab, money committed there. You've got other major employers like JLR, Severn Trent, E.ON, and another 12,000 companies employing over 80,000 people in the region. It's the type of employment that really interests us. It's that advanced manufacturing. It's the aerospace. It's the automotive. They are really high-end jobs. They are jobs that will allow people to have a good disposable income. And the property market in Coventry means that people can get great value, because the value of the homes here is a lot less than some of the other cities that we've referenced so far. So it really feels like an underpriced opportunity. It's an area that we're going to be targeting aggressively over the coming years because the fundamentals are brilliant, the perception isn't, and when that exists, it creates immense opportunity.
It's a strong pitch, Rob. I don't think there would have been many people who were expecting to hear Coventry at the start of this episode, but I think you made the case very clear. Now, we've got a bit of a turnaround job to do on this final non-obvious pick as well. Remember, we say non-obvious for a reason. And this, for long-term listeners of the podcast, given everything we've talked about over recent years, is certainly non-obvious because it's time. It's time to talk about London. But not just London as it is today, but an opportunity that's being stored up in London for the future. So I think there'll be people listening who have the impression that we hate London. Definitely not the case. Fundamentally super strong, so much going for it. But as an investment, it just hasn't made any sense since about when the podcast started, pretty much. It just hasn't made any sense because it already had its growth spur. London bounced back so strongly from the last crash. It was always going to be the case that the stronger growth would be elsewhere until London wages had a chance to catch up. But over the years, a lot of that has happened because prices have stood almost still for years. In 2024, prices were up by 1.3%. In 2025, they were down by 0.1%, according to Home Track. So while that's been happening, wages have been climbing, rents have been climbing. That means yields have been improving. So already the case for London has been getting stronger. Still, maybe not quite there yet. But the other thing that we've just started talking about on the podcast over the last few months of last year, very much underreported, is a major supply crunch that is underway. And there are many causes for this supply crunch, but a big one has been the new safety rules that came into place that slowed down high-rise construction across the country. Any kind of tall building had all these new hoops to jump through, really, really hard to do, slowed everything down, made development more difficult. And of course, in London, pretty much everything that gets built is a high building. What that means is that at the moment, and for the past couple of years, you've had projects that would have been developing not. So you've got projects that haven't started, you've had projects that have been stalled, and effectively they've just locked them up and are waiting for all this to resolve itself. And that means lots of new development that would have been working its way through the process hasn't been. The result of that is in 2027-28, in that financial year, it's forecast there'll be 3,000 new homes available for sale. 3,000 for the whole of London.
It's a staggering number, Rob. And what really makes it hit home is more people will move to London in 1 month than that. So you will have more than 3,000 people come to London in a single month. The population will grow by that much. But yet, we're only going to see that amount of homes complete in 27 and 28. Total, not per year, total. That is a crazy number. And we've been thinking about this. And we've said we've been keeping an eye on London. The yields are improving. And that is true. But we still felt it wasn't right to go. But imagine a world where you can say, well, I know this is going to play out. Let me lock the price in today and complete on it in a few years' time. You can, with off-plan. I actually think this could be a bit of a masterstroke. I actually think this could be as good as our call as we made with Manchester. We said Manchester was going to do incredibly well before pretty much anybody talked about Manchester because we saw an opportunity. And I believe the same opportunity exists here. Now, there aren't going to be many off-plan properties being built, hence the numbers as we've talked about, but there are some that will be built. So getting a long-term off-plan, not 6-12 months, long-term off-plan opportunity, locking the price in today, that for me is something that I'm seriously considering investing in the next 12 months. And I've not invested in London actually ever before. In the Southeast, yes, but I've never personally invested in London. And for the first time, I think I will make that move in 2026. So you don't have to follow me and you don't have to listen to what we've said. But I think this case is so compelling. I just think it's so non-obvious that people will sleep on this opportunity. Why would people go to this level of depth analysis to try and find the opportunity? It's not something you're going to do. We are in this market day in, day out. We speak to people day in, day out who work in this market. So we are in a privileged position where we can potentially spot these opportunities. That's not a promise, so don't come crying if this doesn't work out. But it's a belief, and it's a belief that we are very much going to take advantage of because rents will absolutely keep on increasing, and that will be exaggerated by this lack of supply. The population will absolutely keep on increasing. It's projected to reach 9.6 million by 2035. We're at 8.9 million now. 700,000 people coming into London in the next 9 years. That's a lot of people, but there isn't a lot of property. And what does that create? Well, we think an incredible non-obvious investment opportunity.
So there you go. You've got our obvious picks and our non-obvious picks. And the great thing is you've got a choice. If you go for some of these non-obvious areas, and if we turn out to be right, then there's going to be more total upside because you're getting in earlier, you're getting in at a lower price. And for some people, that will really appeal. But you don't have to do that. There are no prizes for originality in property because of the way the market is, because of the point you're getting in at. If you go into Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham, Derby, Nottingham, it's hard to imagine you regretting that in 10 years' time. You're going to do well, so you can really take your pick. And the great thing is, because we're highly unlikely to have some kind of mega property boom in 2026, there will be choices, you will have options, you will be able to go and get some really good deals done. But as we say every time we talk about hotspots, you can make a really bad investment in a really good area. So do make sure you do your numbers and do make sure you're pushing for a really strong deal because those deals will be out there.
Now, if you think we've delivered a lot of value already, do not go anywhere because we've got a Hub Extra for you. And Rob, you've not actually shared with me what this Hub Extra is yet, so I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Yeah, I was a bit embarrassed to share because this is the most January Hub Extra in the world because it's a book, it's a self-improvement book, and it's called High Performance Habits. It's by Brendan Burchard. It's been out for a few years, but it's January, so along with everyone else, I'm trying to reinvent myself. I'm sure Brendan's having a very good few weeks for book sales, but I was really impressed with this book. If you've spent a bit of time in the self-improvement world, you get to a point where you feel like you've heard it all before. And I was going into this book thinking I'd heard it all before. I just wanted a bit of a reminder, and that's all I wanted from it. But actually, it's got some really interesting ideas. It's got some advice that's very easy to apply, and it's just super well structured. So we'll have to wait till December to see if any of it has actually stuck. But I'll say I enjoyed it, and I was very pleasantly surprised. So that's High Performance Habits.
Rob, I'm so surprised you've produced a self-help book as the Hub Extra because it's been so long that at least I've known for you to read one of these type of books. I used to hoover them up in my early 20s, and I don't think people should poo-poo self-development books because if you haven't gone through that journey of reading them all, I think you're holding yourself back because there is a lot of learning to be done there. The reason why sometimes, including ourselves, people sound a bit skeptical is there's themes, and once you've consumed enough of it, you don't need to carry on. Maybe as a reminder like you've done, Rob. So if you're telling me, Rob, there's a book out there that you would recommend me and others to read, then I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy because I can't believe there's something new there. And I'm very keen to be proven wrong. But even if I felt I've read it before, maybe I need that reminder too. So thank you for that one.
Well, that's us done for another week. You've got our hotspots. You know where you should be investing, or at the very least, you understand how we got to our hotspots so you can go and find the best investment areas of your own. So I think it's fair to say we've started January strong. We've made our predictions. We've given you our hotspots. We've told you how to make it your best property year ever. And we've given you that extra 4-part series to help you take action. So if you haven't listened to all that yet, go back. You'll find it all on your feed. And by the time you've done that, it'll probably be next Thursday. We'll be back here to do it all again. So we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.